So let's just say this. So if folks remember, Robert Hur was appointed to look into the Biden documents issue, where there were documents that were found in his home, or that, I'm sorry, his lawyers found in his home and sent back to where they belong without having to be asked over the course of 2 years to do so.
Or lying about it.
Or lying about it.
Destroying surveillance video.
And Robert Hur was appointed as special counsel by that milquetoast waste of a man, Merrick Garland. And
tell us how you really feel about him.
Yeah, I would, but there are not enough F-bombs that I could drop. But when he provided his report, he decided to add some color to it. You know, so a little personality. Like, instead of just spraying perfume on it like Legally Blonde, he said, let me add in my personal thoughts.
Let me drench it in partisan perfume.
Right. And so what he did was say that, oh, well, you know, there was nothing that we found here, but even if we did, we couldn't possibly try Joe Biden because, you know, he's so old and feeble and doesn't even remember when his son passed away. So come to find out, he's a fucking liar. Like the Republicans that appointed him to the Department of Justice. And he was called out and found that they Democrats held up his transcript, right, versus the report. And lo and behold, one thing did not look like the other. In the transcript, he found himself saying, wow, Joe Biden pretty much has a photographic memory. Photographic. So somehow the photographic memory piece was turned into a old and feeble and doesn't even remember, blah, 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 blah. And when he was called out by Adam Schiff, by Eric Swalwell, Ted Lieu, and others, he tried to act indignant. And no one was having it because he is a fucking hack.
And it's a performance. It's performance theater.
And it was a performance.
It was a performance to audition for the Trump administration and to be a loyal hack in the future of the MAGA army, because I think all these folks, Danielle, are lining up to be the next Trump. They realize this dude is old. They realize this guy might die. He might go to jail. And say all of them are lining up. Right. It's like when the emperor is about to die and you see the rats circling around to grab the crown. But I do feel this is, you know, I'm with you. I feel the last week I'm a little bit more optimistic, Danielle, because I think
call us crazy.
The more people remember how destructive, inane, reckless Trump was, the more. I'm glad Jimmy Kimmel took it for the Oscars, right? Jimmy Kimmel took a minute and he said, oh, apparently we have a minute. And then he read a Trump social post that Trump did, you know, important things during all the crises that a former president decides to now, you know, mock and ridicule Jimmy Kimmel. And he did this rant against Kimmel. Later on, it was revealed that ABC didn't want Kimmel to do it, to do that bit. But Kimmel was like, whatever, I'm the host. And I think it was a good decision to just remind Americans, this is the guy going up against Biden. This is the guy that we barely survived for 4 years. And I think the more people are reminded that, Danielle, and also the more people see clips of January 6th, because Americans have the attention span of gnats on meth, no disrespect to gnats or meth. I think it's one of those things that people say, nah, I'm not really that fond of this old man, but this old guy, this old grandfather, he'll guide us through. This other guy will blow up the kitchen. And it's one of those things where we have a lot of problems to deal with, but I want to make sure that we talk about how sometimes Democrats and Republicans, the establishment, if you will, is oftentimes very incestuous. And money, ultimately, the color green is the color that trumps all other colors and seems to sway Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And it's good to be reminded of that, Danielle, that we're going up against systemic problems. And I say this because just today, as of this recording, the House passed a bill with broad bipartisan support, Danielle, that would force TikTok's Chinese owners to either sell the video app or have it banned in the United States. And this is interesting. Even though we talk about the fealty to Trump, a lot of Republicans defied Trump in supporting this, and Democrats also fell in line, and President Biden said he would sign it if it passes through the Senate. This is deeply troubling to me because even though I'm not on TikTok yet, and even though there are security concerns, Danielle, I'm old enough to know that there's something called Meta, Facebook, which
it's
has
weird.
which has admitted to enabling genocides, which helped to manipulate the 2016 election, which has been a forum for right-wing propaganda and anti-Semitic conspiracies, which was fined $1.3 billion for violating EU data privacy rules. And yet, all of a sudden, we're really concerned about TikTok. Why, Danielle, are we so concerned about TikTok all of a sudden?
It's weird because TikTok isn't in anybody's uterus, and it is not, it's not locked and loaded with a magazine that has the capacity to kill a bunch of people. But for some reason, it poses the biggest threat to America. And the reality is that it is a bunch of bullshit. And it doesn't have anything to do with privacy, because to your point that you had made, Waj, earlier, was that, if we're looking at privacy issues, then we wouldn't be still in business with China, right? Like, do we not remember the white balloons that we're just, stuck in our atmosphere that they sent over here? And so the issue is not privacy, because if it was, then you would go after Meta for all of the reasons that Meta should have been dismembered following 2016 and was not, right? So it's not about privacy. So then you think to yourself, well, they're stealing information and, blah, blah. What about all those face things that they're doing, and they're stealing face, okay, great. So does Apple, like with your iPhones. So does Samsung. So it is not that. What it is.
Oh, human rights, Danielle, right. China. Oh, yeah, the Uyghurs, my bad.
Oh, human rights, the Uyghurs. Because anybody knows or cares at all about that. They care about the fast fashion that they're making. And for very, very cheap. And by very, very cheap, we mean no wages. But where the issue is that guess where young people are getting their information and sharing their information?
Morning Joe and CNN.
No, that's where Joe Biden gets his information.
Thomas Friedman's articles.
Everyone else is on TikTok.
120 million Americans, Danielle, 120 million.
And the fact is also, a lot of people have been able to make a living on TikTok, right? So TikTok has been a force of entrepreneurship as well. And so when you have these things, entrepreneurship, education, right, that is happening outside of these mainstream systems of control, then you realize that the issue is not about your safety. It is about control.
It's about controlling
and that this idea that you are going to force this Chinese company to what? Sell to one of their young American spawn? Because they will, right? Like, it's all theater.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, from birth control and books to TikTok, what we are seeing is a campaign of control, little by little and bit by bit. But the selective outrage with TikTok is bullshit.
And the money, follow the money, folks. This is why we still need investigative journalists who are, by the way, being completely culled. And not just investigative journalists, but media institutions, like we've been trying to warn about ahead of the 2024 election. If you follow the money, Meta gives to both sides of the aisle.
Yes, they do.
AIPAC is giving a lot of money to both sides of the aisle. And speaking about those voices that can bypass the establishment that oftentimes aren't given the platform in the past 5 months with Israel's war, guess where young people have seen the images and the stories directly from Palestinians? On TikTok, which explains why the youth compared to the olds in America is completely lopsided in their support for pro-Palestinian rights and the ceasefire. This is deeply threatening to those in power. And going back full circle, if we may, folks, because these are small rewards that me and Danielle get in life, I would like to tell Democrats, it will be disastrous if you do this. the teens, young people, your base will resent you. They'll remember the people who tried to ban them and their voice and their business from TikTok. And guess what? If you do ban TikTok for these reasons, something else will come in its place.
Yes, it will.
The dam has broken, but people won't forget.